I'm great, Senela. Now that I'm chatting with you, thank you so much for having me.
So lovely to have you. Joel, today I'm going to kick off today's episode with a quote that I love, and that is, "You become what you feed your mind." And the topic today is setting powerful intentions and the significance on mental health in leadership. I'm so excited to have you on board, Joel, because you speak so powerfully to that subject.
Absolutely. Intention is such an important thing that I think a lot of people overlook. People set goals, people do the things that they do, but they don't ask themselves, what is their intention behind it? And I'm going to get into it later because there's fear-based intentions and love-based intentions. So thank you for having me.
Love it. I'm so excited to get into it with you. So, Joel, I speak a lot on inspirational leadership, and that's something I'm passionate about, and particularly around the power of knowing who you are as a leader and learning to translate vision into action, and in a way that others feel connected to it and can follow through on the journey with you, and how this relates to being intentional. So, in my mind, when I'm thinking about intentionality and being intentional, it's typically about choosing to make decisions and take action around what's important. And being intentional is having clarity around what drives you. And that driver is what gets you to really setting goals. And, even in leadership, in self leadership, and how that translates to how we lead others in our work, in whatever we do in life, it's easily manifested in how we interact with people and problems. It manifests. So today, when we talk about setting powerful intentions and in leadership per se, I'm thinking something simply put as learning to begin with the end in mind. And even when we take to decision making, being intentional. So coming back to this topic, this conversation, Joel, I'm so excited because end of the day, when we're talking about setting intentions, it's anchored around alignment to your core. Not just alignment, but alignment in terms of it being purpose driven. You're aligned with your core. And looking at a more deeper perspective into why being intentional could help you would be cutting out bad habits. And I know you're going to speak more powerfully into this, Joel. I'm just setting this up here. It's about cutting out bad habits, making time for self-reflection. And that's something I personally do a lot. Striving for accuracy and not just results, increasing critical thinking. And we know how critical thinking is even in leadership, and how that could even affect our ability to solve problems. And also knowing when to say no and knowing when to let go. So with that, Joel, I'd love to get your perspectives on this.
Absolutely. Gosh, that was so good. And that was so well said, Senela. I love everything about that. I wish more people spoke about this stuff, but it's true. Intentions, like I initially said, there's going to be love-based intentions and there's fear-based intentions. For example, if someone wants to be, let's say, the owner of a business, right? And I want to make it really big in this business and make a ton of money. What is your intention? Your intention could be, well, I see everyone else doing it on Instagram, and if I don't do it, that means that I'm a failure. Therefore, I really want to do it because I can't stop comparing myself to these other successful people. Or are you doing it because you have people that you really admire and you feel that with your business, you're going to be able to help other people, including the world and yourself, and you have a mission out there, right? That's very personal to you. So one intention is fear-based. The other intention is love-based, which is a lot more authentic. The reason why you see so many people that are quote unquote successful and then they end up still hating their lives, hating their marriages that they come home to after this business, and that's because their intention behind that is that sense of validation. I need that that sense of worth from other people. But there's the other mission, which is my intention is love-based, and they're feeling a lot more fulfillment, purpose, right? So it's two completely different things. And trust me, I used to be the type of person that used to seek for validation. When I was doing shows, I'd be like, well, I just need the highest ratings because that means I'm going to be successful. So the question is, how do you define success, right? How do you define success? And the second question, what is your intention behind that? And it's a deep, hard look into yourself, right? You really have to be honest, because a lot of this stuff, these intentions, don't come from yesterday. They don't come from a week before. They really come from our childhood, our developmental stages of childhood, what we learned about the world and how we chose to respond to the world growing up as an adult.
Absolutely. I love that. Absolutely. Even as adults, it goes back to how our nature and how we've been nurtured, and then the cumulative experience along the way. And I also love how you broke it down into these two broad perspectives, these two strong factors, and which are they? What do we stand behind? What do we stand for? Another thing I'm thinking about is I want to get deeper into mental health, because I think mental health is as important to leadership as setting powerful intentions as a rudder is for a ship. Because this is our navigation system right here. We can't talk about leadership if we're not going to address mental health and the mind behind that. And I came across this really interesting research article that stated that over 50% of business leaders say that in their position in seniority, it's hard to talk about mental health. And approximately 1 in 4 people feel less support for mental health issues since becoming more senior. So as they escalate, as they progress in their leadership career, it becomes a bigger stigma. So that's a very interesting research article I came across. So, we're going to get into stigma around mental health, even as it relates to leadership, self-leadership, and how, just our peers perceive the whole idea of mental health. I want to talk about the legacy, the movement, Joel. I've been watching your space, and I'm a fan. I got to tell you, I want to go deep into that. Can you tell us all about Change Your Algorithm and also Recipe for Change?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So yes, basically, I am an executive producer for television. I'm also the founder of a free mental wellness program called Change Your Algorithm. And Change Your Algorithm is basically, exactly as it sounds, a free mental wellness program open to anyone and everyone. We now have thousands of members globally, and we have the largest community of volunteer therapists that basically provide their services virtually here in LA. Soon it's going to be in Italy, and then also the UK, and then Canada. And we're really, really honored because we only launched a year ago, and we've had hundreds and hundreds of free classes that's open to anyone and everyone. And the reason why we do that is to break the mental health stigma. There's the suicide rates are extremely, extremely high. Suicide rates tie into unemployment rates. And I know that there's millions of people still struggling to find a job. And then depression, there's nearly, higher than that, 240 million people across the globe, higher than 260 million across the globe have anxiety. And so when you have facts like the United Nations stating that the next pandemic is a mental health pandemic, which we're already in, you go, why is this taboo? Right? And it's taboo because we have the fear of judgment from other people, which I'll get into later. Other job, Recipe for Change. I just finished this beautiful project for YouTube Originals as a Filipino American. It was the most personal show has ever been for me. And I've done, The Biggest Loser, Hell's Kitchen for Fox, all of that stuff. And this one was personal because it ties into what's going on right now with the Asian Pacific Islander community. And so we brought in 21 Asian celebrities, activists, influencers, chefs to talk about what's going on right now in the Asian community and what we can do to make ourselves visible, accurately represented, and more importantly, what we can do to stop hate and racism. So those are my two worlds, which ironically ties into what you were just talking about. How do you talk about mental health when it comes to leadership? And what I do is I basically try my best to lead by example. So when I'm leading my show, I am going to try my best to treat people with kindness, right? To practice things like gratitude, to not just always be positive, but to actually acknowledge the accomplishments, versus being the type of leader that is more of a fearful leader where no one wants to be around that person. They think they're going to get fired. They're in pins and needles. This person is so unhappy with their life at home. They take it out on work. So that's really what I can do to talk about mental health when it comes to the workplace. Plus, not to mention, a lot of people know about Change Your Algorithm. So I always invite them to my free program, which provides free mental health support. And the reason why I do this is because I want people to look at me and go like, oh, he doesn't have to do that. That program is 100% for free. He's not making any money off it. He's literally doing it because it saved his life. Mental health, the understanding of it, saved my life. Not the TV producer stuff, not the leader stuff, literally understanding how my mind works.
Joel, that's exactly where I'm coming to next. I want to know what really drove you into this vision.
Gosh, yeah. So, I had been with NBC's The Biggest Loser for about 10 years, and it did so great. It aired in 90 different countries. And when I was running that show, I started to realize like nothing was good enough for me, no matter how big the show, no matter how much money I was making. And then I started to work on other shows, and then I still felt like it wasn't good enough, no matter how big the show, no matter how much money I was making. I was going through depression. I was going through severe anxiety. I was drinking 2 bottles of wine a night secretly, not even socially, right? Not even like a party, like, oh, let's get drunk. Literally come home when no one's around. I would drink 2 bottles of wine a night. And I realized that none of this was enough for me because I felt like I was enough for me. I couldn't deal with myself. I could deal with everyone else, and I was a fantastic people pleaser, but I could not be able to make myself happy. And so what I did was I called for help. I literally called my dad and I said, I have a drinking problem that is going to be leading me to my death grave if I keep this up. He had no idea. My family had no idea. And that is the importance of asking for help, because drop that fear of ego and judgment and like, what are people going to think? Because sometimes you can hang on to the ego and just be like, no, I don't need to ask for help. And then next thing you know, you're not here, you're dead. And so for me, I was like, I want to be alive. And they found rehab facilities for me. I chose one. I took a step back from entertainment for 50 days. I got to work with the best therapists. And I was like, how am I just now understanding, how the subconscious mind works, how to set boundaries, how to practice forgiveness, intentionality, and traumas, inner child work, meditation. And I was like, holy moly, this is like what I needed to know, And so I realized I didn't have a drinking problem. I had a problem that I was treating with drinking. My coping skills were completely limited. That was my way of dealing with my emotions, which was avoiding it. And so when I left treatment after spending tons of money out of pocket, I told myself, well, I don't want anyone to have to spend a ton of money just to save their life. I don't want anyone to spend a penny to know the things that I know. Like, I want them to know it for free. And so that's when I created Change Your Algorithm. And coincidentally, the quarantine for the pandemic happened and people were told to stay in their homes. And then I was like, okay, I really have to do this now. And so it became this virtual program with volunteer therapists leading classes. And it was just so beautiful to watch it grow, because initially I was telling myself, no, don't do it. You don't have mental health experience. You just went through your own thing. Or no, don't do it. You're an executive producer. Just stick to your executive producer stuff. And that ties into what you were talking about, which is, what is your intention behind it, right? And my intention was that I saved my life. I want to be able to help others do the same for theirs.
Yes, you know what, Joel, I absolutely resonate with that. And thank you for your vulnerability. And I'm going to be vulnerable and share even right here. Throughout my life, whenever I hit rock bottom, I could either, it's a sort of like a turning point in my life, a U-turn almost. I could just do a complete U-turn and turn around and not move forward, not even look forward. I just keep walking back. In those moments, when I hit really low, like, what I mean, like rock bottom, I mean bottom, I get into this mode where, yes, they go to the whole notion of being self-destructive, and then you come full circle, and I'm like, Senela, let's start asking some powerful questions. And that's when pivoting happens. It's facing the reality, facing the circumstance, having that sense of self-awareness. And I love how you just raised your hand or your little tiny finger at the time, and you said, Dad, I need help. You know, because I also say this in my women's leadership programs, Joel. I'm like, no woman is an island. We need support. No man is an island. We need each other. Absolutely. And, you know, I want to go deeper into this. Let's deep dive. I'm going back into your Instagram. Oh my goodness. You've got so much of content there. It's so inspiring. You talk about personal boundaries. You talk about anxiety. You talk about belief system, addictions, cognitive distortions, and so on. Let's go deep. I want to hear it all. Can you take us deeper?
Absolutely. And yes, so everything that I talk about in my Instagram aren't just things that, you know, I read in a book and I thought it'd be cute to make a little video about it. These are the things that literally saved my life. These are the things that I learned from other therapists when I was in treatment, and I continued to implement into my life after treatment. And I noticed that these things were working. How do I know that they were working? Because when I left treatment, it went into 2020. January of 2020, I lost my good friend to suicide. February of 2020, I lost my mother. She had a very rare disease. March was when the quarantine happened and entertainment was becoming really slow. And then you have a racial revolution, which is much needed. And the entire time, despite like the biggest things happening, I didn't relapse. I didn't turn to a bottle. I didn't turn to numbing my pain. I literally sat there and I was empowered by everything that was happening around me. When I lost my friend, I said, I'm going to raise awareness about suicide. You know, when I lost my mother who was going through depression, I said, I'm going to speak about depression so I can help others. Right. And then when, you know, the pandemic was happening, I was like, I'm going to open a free mental wellness program. And when the racial revolution was happening with Black Lives Matter and eventually Stop Asian Hate, we started to lead classes on, you know, racial traumas and what we can do to be in solidarity. And so all of those things, boundaries, practicing forgiveness, these are the things that I implement in my life daily, on a daily basis. Again, it's not just something you read on a book and I'm like, oh, this is cute, let me talk about it. This is something that I practice on the daily, because the most beautiful therapist taught me all about it, and my mind was just like so blown, you know. And I want people to experience the same thing when I talk about all of those things. The truth of the matter is that these are not things, Senela, that are brand new, right? This is not like, oh, what is this thing called gratitude, right? These are things that have always existed. But what is really brand new to me is the fact that we're all talking about it now, right? And that I'm talking about it now as somebody who has experience in entertainment. And that's difficult at first, because I go, oh my gosh, am I going to talk about forgiveness in my Instagram page? Or am I going to talk about how I had an addiction to alcohol and how we, you know, compassion is way more important? Oh yeah, for sure. But it takes that unfamiliarity and that uncomfortableness that you need to really lean to in order to change yourself and change the lives of others.
Yes, gosh, I feel it here. Absolutely. I'm sure, you know, it's going to resonate with a lot of people. Just being open, being, you know, what is the stigma we talk so heavily about? And then you also mentioned the word ego just, you know, a couple of minutes ago. And that's kind of like this crazy noise in the background, you know, the society throws at us. But, you know, we live in a world, the pun is this, Joel, we live in a world where people want authenticity, but do they? The minute you put your toe out and you want to be authentic, man, you're shut down. There's this crazy stigma. But it's interesting. I think it was John Maxwell that said, hurting people hurt people. Mm-hmm. Why do we have bad bosses in the workplace? That goes straight into childhood trauma as well. Mm-hmm. What you see as adults in maturity, in mature ages, is things that are still holding us back, that were formed during our formative years, in our childhood. And a lot of that is still not cleansed. It's just, you know, overlooked. So I love that we covered such a deep and wide perspective on mental health. So it's relevant to think from it from the point of childhood and how that impacts adulthood as well. And my last question is this, Joel. How can leaders and individuals break away and challenge the status quo culture and mindset, which really holds us back? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say fail quicker and don't be afraid to fail. Redefine what failure means to you. I think that a lot of people have a fear of failure because they think it's literally the end all be all. Like, oh my gosh, if I don't succeed in this, that means that my life is over, right? That's literally how they define failure. So how about this? Instead of defining failure as a negative outcome, start defining failure as a positive beginning. Right? Nelson Mandela once said, I don't lose, I win or learn. And that to me really resonates because the strongest I've been, those moments in my life have come from shows that rated poorly, that barely anybody watched, right? Have come from, moments in my life where no one really paid attention to that. And I said, okay, well, how do I become better? It didn't stop me. It wasn't enough for me to go, let me give up on my dreams. It wasn't enough for me to say like, well, let me just throw my goals out the door. Like these were things to prepare me for a bigger opportunity. And I always talk about how like the blessing is on the other side of the battle. Just because you failed at something doesn't mean that the battle's over. It means you got like more armor on you. You just got stronger. Go continue. Don't turn around and then call it a day. Another quote that I love is ships are always safe ashore, but that is not what they're built for. Right. So we as ships can always be like safe at the shore, be like, well, you know what? I'm not going to fail here. Like, it's really nice here. Right. But that's not what we're built for. We're meant to explore the ocean. We're meant to like conquer all the oceans. Right. And there are going to be moments where the waves are going to be rough and we're going to quote unquote fail. But honestly, it's going to make the victories that much sweeter. And the other thing, too, other than, fail quicker, is always choose progress over perfection. I feel like people look at somebody on Instagram or a resume and they're like, that is the perfect life. And I have to have that life. It is so perfect. Right. And then they're not going to be happy until they have that. But what happens is that when we stumble, we fall, we fail on the way to that goal, we go, oh my gosh, I'm such a disaster. But what we're not doing is we're not celebrating the progress and the victories that we're actually gaining on the way to that. So instead of looking of just that perfect little goal, actually going, wait, I'm actually doing better than how I was yesterday. Because that's the whole point, isn't it? With comparison, we try to be better than other people. But with progress, we're just trying to be better than the person we used to be. So I feel like that is what a lot of leaders need to do, is to redefine what does failure mean and replace perfection with progress.
I absolutely love that. And, you said, fail quicker. I love that's radical. That's disruptive. Let's disrupt thinking right there. Let's redefine that. So you said fail quicker and progress over perfection. I absolutely love that. And something I do, Joel, even in my coaching programs, I have my coaching programs conducted in over 20 countries worldwide. And something I always tell them, the minute they feel overwhelmed, they're like, I have this mammoth task. I need to transform. What do I do? I'd be like, hang on, deep breaths, 10 deep breaths. We break this down. And let's focus on the baby step. What have you got to do? What is your next immediate baby step? Let's start there. So I love the whole idea about failing quickly, the mindset around that. And it's powerful. It's not weak. It's powerful. And also progress over perfection. So with that, oh, Joel, I absolutely loved it. Love you tremendously. Your movement, it's so phenomenal. I just want to end with a quote that I came across for our episode today. And it's a quote by Dan Millman. And it goes as, you don't have to control your thoughts. You just have to stop letting your thoughts control you. And so until next time, remember, I love that quote as well. So until next time, remember to lead authentically, change your algorithm, and lead with clarity, strategy, and take action. We'll see you next time.